The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of California. I am joined by the old crew, the old with an apostrophe. I don't want to talk about age. Get an age discrimination note here. We got the four guys who are the baseball purists, and we've all been the walking wounded of late, and it's a pleasure to welcome back four guys who make my day, certainly. Hal Bock, welcome back. Heshie?
Thank you. Thank you, Zig Zag Man.
All right. And George Case the Third, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's it. And I'm so happy to be back with everybody. It's great.
And Alan Blumkin is here.
Hello there, everybody.
Long stint in rehab, major surgery. We are delighted to have you back. I can't say enough. David Hubler, Corporal. You're a sergeant now. You got promoted from Corporal syndrome.
Yeah,
Am I correct?
It's a harbor tunnel syndrome. Every time you go through
it wasn't Corporal tunnel.
Corporal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And this is your second one, your second wrist, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was, and I'm finished as far as I know because I don't have any more wrists.
Okay. Okay, well, you may have to go in for a 20-year booster. That's what they're saying. But I have some good news I just heard on CNN. The booster shots that they were talking about may not come to pass. We could get by without them. I, for one, have taken my second vaccine about a week ago. In a week from now, I will be fully immunized, as they say. I hope you guys are safe along those lines.
I had both my vaccines in the rehab.
Good.
So, because when I was asking for them, I was in the hospital. They said we don't give it to patients.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but then again, I lost my medical license.
Yeah, when you're in the hospital, the rehab for 2 months, there's a lot of things you don't understand.
Right, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I'm very glad I'm out of there.
Alan, do you have full mobility now? I mean, are you up and around, walking and exercising, or how are you feeling?
Well, I'm exercising, but I've been on a walker for the last 5+ years, so I'm back on a walker again. But
okay.
Before I went through this, I could barely stand up.
Right.
Wow.
Tomorrow's my birthday. I'm 78 tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, many, many more. And David, I want to thank you for helping George Grimm and I with our recently completed book. And it makes me very happy. The fact that all four of you are featured in this book, along with others in Comfortably Zoned, makes me happy to talk to you tonight. August publication, Amazon, and I'm feeling completed for Hal Bock. How many books have you written, Hal?
13.
13. What was your first one like when you had it published? What were the feelings that went through you
the thrill of a lifetime.
Okay.
I was delighted. I couldn't stop talking about it. I was so happy. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and it was an achievement, you know, and I was very, very happy with it, and it became a very good reference book for hockey people. The complete encyclopedia of ice hockey.
Wow. How did you have to have an agent and stuff? In other words, how did you go around and get publishers to, you know, I hear all kinds of horror stories about how long it takes to get a lot of turn downs and all that.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, George. I never really worked with an agent. I tried to peddle books on my own. I was successful occasionally, and I was unsuccessful more frequently.
Right.
But sometimes they came to me out of the blue. We want you to write a book about such and such. Great, I'm happy to do it.
Right.
So it's a mix pretty much. But I've heard the same horror stories about agents, and I've not messed with any agents. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I ask David Hubler about his experience with the book, with his great book, The Gnats and the Greys, I want to ask you how, because we haven't really ever talked about writing a biography of a cartoonist, a sports illustrator, Gallo. Am I correct?
No, you're wrong. Willard Mullen.
Willard Mullen. Okay.
Willard Mullen, who invented the Brooklyn bum, the Dodgers bum.
What was he about?
What was he about? He was a whimsical guy. He was he had a whimsical sense of humor, and
okay.
I was a kid growing up here in New York, and my dad would always bring home the World Telegram and Sun. We would always have that in the house every night. And Mullen worked for the World Telegram and Sun. He did a cartoon every day. And so I would, one of the first things I would look for in the paper was his cartoon, because it was always good for a laugh. And he had a tremendous following. And he passed away, I guess, in 1978, at thereabouts. And it was my view that a new generation of people should get to know Willard Mullen, that current generations would not know what a great talent he was and the humor that he packed in those cartoons. And so I contacted the Willard Mullen estate, got in touch with them, and they said, sure, we'd love to have you do it. And his attorney, the attorney for the estate, was invaluable. He got many of the cartoons, because if you don't have cartoons, you don't have a Willard Mullen book.
Right.
And so I did the writing, the narrative, and we had the cartoons, and it's one of my proudest achievements, because I felt like it would be an opportunity for a new generation of people to learn what a great talent this guy was. And his major achievement in baseball was inventing the Brooklyn Dodger bum, who's an iconic character. And so he's featured in the book, obviously. And we got Mullen's daughter to write an introduction about what it was like growing up with Mullen, that sort of thing. So it was a major achievement, and one of my favorite books that I've done.
Hal, let me ask you something. Are those cartoons copyrighted? I mean, how does the legal aspect of political or baseball cartoons work? In other words, he was syndicated, right? And those cartoons appeared. They weren't just in the New York area, I don't think, were they?
But Scripps Howard. He worked for Scripps Howard.
Oh, he did? Okay.
My wife, the psychologist, once told me, "Don't ask a question that can be answered no." So I didn't ask any questions. I had the Mullen imprimatur, the family and the lawyer on my side, and I just went about my business. And they got the cartoons. They supplied the cartoons. I supplied the words, and away we go. You know.
Right.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
It's a terrific book.
He did a lot of the Dodger yearbook covers.
Yes, he did. That's right.
And the Mets.
And he also had a thing with the Giants where he had this giant with a big pot belly.
Right.
Willie. The Giant's name was Willie.
He was, in my opinion, the best of the best. You mentioned Bill Gallo. I think Bill Gallo maybe is a distant second as far as I'm concerned, because Mullen was just the classiest of them all.
I love that.
What was his background, Hal? How did he get into it?
When he was a kid, he went to work for a department store in Los Angeles. He grew up in California. He went to work for a department store in Los Angeles, and he just kind of did it. You know, he did it as a hobby. And one of the bags that came across that he was dealing with, one of the pieces of luggage, belonged to Tom Mix, and he drew a cartoon, a cowboy, a Tom Mix cartoon, and somebody saw it and said, "You ought to really do this." And one thing led to another, and he got into it, and he became the greatest, in my mind, the greatest sports cartoonist in the history of the business.
Yep, I agree.
I loved his work. As a kid growing up here in New York, I would look at that cartoon. That would be the first thing I'd look at in the paper every day. He was wonderful. He had a wonderful sense of humor, and he captured it in the cartoons. He was a whimsical guy, you know.
Yeah.
Now, how did those cartoons? Did he supply the captions or the speaking of the various, or did he just do the cartoon part?
No, he did everything. He did everything.
Okay.
And he created his signature. His signature was very iconic. It was all done with straight lines. His name was Willard Mullen. Willard, the W is a slanty letters, right? Not Willard Mullen's not his signature. It was straight lines, vertical and horizontal lines. It was a tremendous sense of not only a sense of humor, but just inventive. He was inventive. He went to Ebbets Field one day for a doubleheader, and we all did that at one time or another in our careers. Went to the ballpark with not a particular idea in mind about what we were going to write. He went to the ballpark looking for an idea for a cartoon. And the Dodgers went out and played, and they lost, I guess, a doubleheader. And he left halfway through the second game, and he got into a cab, and the cabbie said, "How did our bums do today?" And that lit a light in his head, that the Dodgers were bums, and in those days they were losers. So that's how it came to be that he invented the Brooklyn Bum with a cigar stub in his mouth, and his shoes were falling apart, and raggedy jacket, you know. And it's a brilliant cartoon. All you got to do is look at it, and you can't help but laugh, you know.
Well, you know, one of the things that made him so special were those touches. The little thing about the Band-Aid, the handkerchief tied around his shoe.
Right, that's right.
So those were the little touches that made him really a genius at the craft.
And then he invented, once he had the Brooklyn Bum, he invented images for the other teams. Like, for example, the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, the logical thing for the Cardinals would be a bird, a beautiful bird, right? We have Cardinals here, and I love them. They're just beautiful. But his image for the St. Louis Cardinals, since they played in St. Louis on the banks of the Mississippi River, he made the St. Louis Cardinals image a gambler, a St. Louis Swiftie, a
riverboat gambler, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And the Phillies, the Whiz Kids, was a little juvenile delinquent.
Yeah.
He used his grandson as an image for the juvenile delinquent, who would have a slingshot out of his back pocket, that sort of thing. And that same image, when he was hired to do the Mets, when the Mets were invented, he used that same image for the Mets, a little baby Met, you know, baby in diapers, starting to play in the National League. So, I mean,
that was on
What's that?
That was on the first Met yearbook.
Yeah,
cover
on
the first spec yearbook. Yeah.
He had and he had a wonderful sense of how to connect with the reader, and he was just a brilliant cartoonist, just a brilliant guy.
Yeah, Hal, I have to tell you what you said about coming home, your father coming home with the World Telegram and Sun. That's exactly how it happened in my house too. My father would come home with the World Telegram and Sun, and that would be the first thing I turned to. The sports pages had to see what Willard Mullen had drawn.
Wow.
Well, I forever today is no different for me, and I'm 82 years old. I read the paper back page to front, back first, because the back pages are man's achievements, the front are man's failures.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Wow.
You can use that if you like.
I probably will. But I will quote you. I definitely quote you. That is well said. You know, you talked about something about going to the ballpark and no one had an idea of what they were going to write about that day. How, as a journalist, were there days when it was almost impossible to come up with some angle of what to write about, and it became a job and a chore?
No. First of all, I love baseball. I love what used to be baseball. The version that they're playing these days, I can't quite relate to. But I love.
Well, that's the theme of what I wrote about with you guys in the book. What's happened to our game and how it's been bastardized and how we absolutely hate what's going on. And
the baseball that I grew up with, there was always something to write about. There was always something would happen in the game that would trigger your story, that would give you a story. And if it didn't, you went into the clubhouse and looked for somebody to talk to. And the players in those days, I don't know if they're still that way, but the players in those days were pretty easy to talk to. You'd go up to them and introduce yourself and say, have you got a minute? And the guy would say, sure, what's on your mind? And I know I always started an interview, and I told this to my class when I taught, I always started an interview by saying, tell me about such and such, whatever, Tell me about playing third base in a tie game, how you go about defensively or whatever. That would start a conversation, and that's really what you wanted to do. You wanted to have a conversation. And I never went to the ballpark and came home without a story. You always came home with a story because that's your job.
Right. Right, but there were times it was more difficult than others.
Oh, yeah, of course. Certainly.
Okay.
That's why they call it work.
It's different writing a book than a day-to-day journalist type thing.
Sure.
I'll ask the same question of David Hubler. When you were writing your book, were there times when it was just a blank, a day, either a day or a session?
No, yeah, I know what you're getting at, but no, with that book, there was a history there. I mean, I could follow the history, but I'll tell you a story. My second book was called The Politician's Health, Diet, and Sex Guide, and it started at...
Nice title, David.
Yes, and it was a humorous book, and we had a guy doing cartoons for it, and the funny part of it was to me, it was very humorous, and the trouble was when you write a humor book and you're writing it, there's nobody around to laugh. It's just you and the computer, and the computers don't laugh at you, So it was hard to determine what was really funny and what wasn't. But The story with the politician's health diet and sex guide was that some people took it really seriously, and others just sort of as a joke. But it was hard. It was hard to. It was like, I guess, even when you write scripts for TV or whatever, or films, you're in a room usually with a bunch of people sitting on a table, like for Saturday Night Live. There's a staff of about 8 or 10 people. When you write a humorous book, you're on your own for the most part. You can't just stop and laugh, although I did a number of times. And the book got a pretty good reception, and I was pleased with it. But what was happening while I was writing it, the publisher would come back to me and say, "I need another 4 pages. Can you get me?" I'm thinking, I'm running out of gags here, folks. So, but the Nats and the Grays, of course, it was easy. Started out with Pearl Harbor and ended with Jackie Robinson. So you can't, you've got a pathway. It's like a AAA triptych. You know exactly where you're going with it.
Yeah. Boy, you date yourself with that one, a triptych.
No, I just got one the other day. My wife went down to Florida, and she wanted a triptych. So instead of getting one with a little binder on the end, I just took it off the internet. But it's still called a triptych.
Whoa, didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned something today. I learned something from you guys all the time. Al, we talked about something on the phone the other day that may interest the three of you and our audience. Alan and myself are incredible baseball card enthusiasts. Love Topps in particular, and love baseball cards. I found a way, because my collection is very, very spotty, and it's very difficult. Topps put out a book years ago for all the baseball cards ever printed, year by year. And big, heavy book, hard to carry around and just refer to. Alan has known this for a while, but there is a collection of Topps team-by-team paperback books, which aren't very big. But they have year by year every picture of every Topps card printed in them, and I've developed a collection of my favorite teams, the Giants, the Mets, the Yankees, favorite teams to follow, the Angels, the Dodgers, the A's, and one more. But I've got a book, a little reference right by my bed where I can just go back in time to baseball cards, and so I wanted to pass that along. Alan, you want to talk about?
Yeah. Also, a number of years ago, Topps put out 2 books, baseball cards of the 50s and baseball cards of the 60s, which are a lot thinner than the big books. And the baseball cards of the 50s book contains the Bowman sets also.
Oh yeah,
that's
I have
nice.
that. That's my Mickey Mantle rookie year card. It's a Bowman.
Whoa, you have a Mickey Mantle rookie year card.
I do indeed.
Wow, that's.
Let me ask you, Alan. Did they in these books? Did they show you both the face side and then the back side? Or just
no, they don't show you the back. They just show you the front.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the thing is that Topps bought Bowman out after 1955, and when I was a kid, all I have is reprint sets. I couldn't keep what I had when I was a kid. I had to throw them out because, whatever. So most of the early sets have been reprinted, and they're a hell of a lot cheaper than the. You can't mistake them because the gloss is different, the cardboard is different. And with the tops at 52, 53, and 54, which they printed, they're all smaller than the real ones.
Oh.
So, because they after 1956, they shrunk the cards to in 1957, which is what they've been doing ever since. But I remember as a kid spending quarters and dimes searching for 54 and 55 Topps Mickey Mantles, which never existed.
They used to come with bubble gum too, and then you could. It had that little coating of like almost like a little dusting of the right on top of the cards.
Went with me and all my friends back then.
Actually, it was rat poison.
Right into the sewer. They went right into the gum. Went right into the sewer.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That must have been why they go on a canal.
Yeah, because my mother said to me is, when I started chewing once, she said, if I ever catch you with that again, so I buy the pack, and, the gum would come out and throw the sewer. The worst was when Topps came out in 51 with those little cards, blue backs and red backs.
Right.
The gum was caramel. Yeah, it was caramel, the gum, and that went down so fast you could.
Well, I wasn't allowed to chew the gum either, so
yeah,
we have that in common too.
The sewer rats were grateful, I'll guarantee you.
Yes.
Well, the story in '52 when Topps printed their first set with many leftovers that they didn't sell. They created what was basically the nostalgia industry by creating a shortage. Unintentionally, they put all their old cards, or the cards didn't sell, out on a barge in the East River. So
that was like the 52 Topps high numbers were like that.
Right.
They couldn't sell them because by the time they came out, kids were in camp or away for the summer or whatever. And they had them stacked in the warehouse, which is right by the Gowanus. It was right by the Gowanus canal here, and they dumped them. They dumped tons of them. That's why the real ones are so totally expensive now.
Okay. Now, George Case, I want to talk to you about any cards you may have of your dad's. Do you get requests for old autographs that he may have signed? What's that like? What are baseball cards like in the Case household?
Well, personally, I'm learning a lot about the baseball card business from you guys. I was never really a collector. The cards I have are all my dad's cards, and they're all, much earlier than Topps. There were play balls and Gaudies and those cards. I think he was in 7 or 8 cards. But when he played, and Alan would know this, baseball cards stopped production during the war, because the cardboard was part of, I guess, the rationing or whatever it was. So I think the last card was made in like 41, and then there was 5 years. I think they started to bring them back in 46 or 47. So occasionally...
48.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Because occasionally somebody will say, hey, I got one of your dad's cards, and they'll put a picture on there where my dad had signed it, and I said, yeah, that's my dad's signature. And because he used to get fan mail with people, they would have his baseball card, and they would ask my dad to sign it, or sometimes they would include money. Well, my dad always either signed it or signed an index card and returned the money, because he would never take money for his autograph. But the cards that I have personally, like I say, I didn't collect them, but I think I have every card that my dad was in, beginning, I think, with with Gowdy. I think it was the 39, and then play ball in a couple of years. And you guys could look, Alan, you might even know this, but I think it was in 40 they used a black and white photograph, and in 41 they used the same pose, but it was a drawing. It was a color drawing. It wasn't the actual
color was a 40.
photograph.
They actually put out a very small set in 1942. They have, I think, 72 cards. 72 cards in it. And there were a number of Hall of Famers in that. In fact, Joe DiMaggio was in the play balls, and he was never on a Topps or a Bowman card.
Okay.
After the war. But, I have reprints of all this stuff because, it was just too damn expensive for me.
Right.
And that was it. Then, as you said, after that rump set in 42, Bowman came out in 1948 with a 48-card set.
Okay. Now the one thing, Alan, the one thing that I had, which always was curious to me, I think it was Gowdy. They had 4 different cards. It was the same card, but 4 different color backs, the background. Yeah. But when you turned it over, the back of the card was totally blank. There were no stats, there were no write-ups or anything. So, and apparently, from what I understand, those cards are, worth a pretty good penny right now. But they, to me, were not really attractive. I mean, it's the same card, but just one was red, one was yellow, one was blue, and one was green. But the backs are totally blank.
The guy put out a 240-card set in 1933, which had like 4 Babe Ruths and whatever.
Right.
And after that they went downhill.
I'll tell you what we used to do. Postcards used to be a penny a piece, and I'd go into the drugstore and for $1 I'd buy 100 postcards and send them off. We were able to get special addresses for like the Yankees and the Dodgers, and we'd send them off to each guy, you're my favorite ball player, et cetera. And all during the summer, some of these guys would send back autographed pictures. And the Yankees and the Dodgers were great. The Dodgers, Campanella, Robinson, they'd send these back autographed pictures, and the Yankees had this special. You got color photos of these guys, about 3 by 5 or so, of the Yankees. As long as you sent them to this particular address, which was kept very secret among all the guys in the neighborhood, but they were beautiful pictures. And the other thing that I remember, and this too, if you went to an amusement park like Coney Island, they used to have these like penny machines, and right. You put a penny in the machine, and you put the slot in and pulled it back out, and a photo would come of a ball player on a pretty pretty good piece of cardboard. It was either sepia tone or black and white, right. But you never know who you were going to get. And there was nothing on the back.
They were exhibits. Exhibit cards, right? And they had a machine because the guy sent me one with a header, and the header it was really I was really happy to get it. The header was my dad and Jackie Robinson that slotted in to this machine. And so you, like David was saying, you put a penny in and you would get back whatever one came out. But this header card, I never saw it before. I have the exhibit cards, but I never saw that header. And there was my dad. It was actually a picture of him that they used on exhibit cards circling the base. And I think one of Jackie, I forget his pose, but it was really interesting to see the two of them together.
George, when was your dad's last year?
47.
47, that's what I thought. Right. And the reason I ask is I'm going to tell you a little story. I discovered baseball in 1947. My father took me to my first game, and I realized what a wonderful activity this was. So I was hooked. And I used to buy these cards that David is just describing. You put a penny in the machine, and out pops a card. So I put my hard-earned penny into the machine, and out pops a card. And the card has a picture of your dad. It's an iconic pose. You know it very well.
Right.
Sliding across home plate.
Yeah.
He's spread eagle, really, right across home plate. And I look at the
like
picture.
a hook slide almost.
Yeah, you know the picture, right?
Right.
I look at it, and I said, wait a minute. Who is this guy? I never heard of him.
Who the hell is George Case? I never heard of him before.
That's exactly right. I was very annoyed because
I bet
it's
you
my
were.
hard-earned penny. You know, wait a minute, I got cheated. I never heard of this guy.
I'm sorry about that, Hal.
George, your dad is the most talented, unheralded player that I've ever heard about.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Ralph. One of the things I've enjoyed, and I don't mean to blow my dad's horn, but the fact is a lot of people would say to me, hey, I looked up your father after I've seen some stuff on Facebook, and he was really a pretty good ball player. I said, yeah, he was. I said, but, my dad just happened to play with some of the all-time greats. I mean, when you're talking about, Gehrig and DiMaggio and Williams and Feller and all those guys, I mean, obviously they were the superstars, but my dad was playing there at the same time and knew them all and played with them and against them. So it was a great time.
Considered to be the fastest player of his time.
Yeah, he was. He was very quick. And that was, I think I've said, one of the highlights of my dad's career was not a baseball story, but the fact that he raced Jesse Owens and lost to Jesse Owens by a tenth of a second. So, he was quick.
Would you tell the difference between being fast and being a base stealer? In other words,
yeah. I mean, it's interesting, Ralph.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was a very smart base runner. He would only run certain situations, but he had great quickness, great speed to get started. But he always said, when he played, there was a right time and a wrong time to steal a base. And he said, if I was playing today, I could have stolen over 100 bases. Guys are stealing third with 2 outs. And he said back when he played, they just didn't do that. They had to be knowledgeable. And, you learn to get your jump, whether it be on the pitcher or the catcher. I mean, if it's the pitcher, his motion. If it's the catcher, how good an arm he has. And a lot of guys just think that because they're really fast, that's going to make them a good base stealer, but you really have to be knowledgeable about base running, and it's more than just speed.
George, it's interesting you say that because the image of the ball players of the 1920s and 30s and even into the 40s are a bunch of, guys from small towns and didn't have much education,
right.
Certainly didn't go to college, and yet they knew the game. Backwards and forwards. Today, you get a lot of guys who have gone to college, and they'll get caught trying to go to third on a ground ball to the shortstop.
Right.
I mean,
right. Well, David. That's what turns me off about baseball today. I get so upset because my dad drilled into me certain things you did or did not do when you're playing ball, and you would never. If you're on second base and a ball is hit to shortstop or whatever it is, you just don't move it unless you have to. But guys today are running and they're getting thrown out at third, or they're making stupid base running mistakes. They're running through signs and they're doing all kinds of stuff, and that would drive my father crazy. And I remember sitting watching television with him, and he'd say, "Now look at that." I mean, he would really get upset, and I would say, Pop, I really appreciate you telling me this because I just learned a lot about baseball by just sitting and watching and listening to him.
I'll bet.
There was a play the other day. I didn't see it because it was before I got out of the rehab, where in a Yankee game, and there was a first and second, and there was a hit to the outfield, and the runner got forced at third base. I've been watching baseball since 1951. I've never even heard of something like that.
That's amazing.
Well, I thought you were going to mention the game the other day, Alan, where they were trying to get a rally going. I think it was the Yankees and the White Sox, and somebody, it was one out. Guy darts to third, and he gets thrown out by the catcher. Tried to steal third.
Oh,
second. I mean, you just don't do that.
Right. Mm. No, it's amazing to see some of the blunders and you would, like David, what you said earlier. I mean, when my dad played, I think the players were much more sound fundamentally. Now, they weren't the educated players like they have today, but they learned fundamentals coming up through the ranks. Today you get a lot of the kids that are coming out of college. They're playing like maybe 1 year. They get brought up to the big leagues, and they really don't understand fundamentals. And as we've talked many times, guys don't know how to bunt. They don't know how to hit behind the runner. They don't know a lot of this stuff. The outfielders are thrown to the wrong base. That's the kind of fundamental mistakes that are being made today, and it really bothers me as a baseball, what I call myself a baseball traditionalist, and a lot of other guys my age, our age. When you see that kind of stuff, it really turns you off.
Yep, it sure does.
One of my favorite.
When was the last time you heard the expression, get them on, get them over, get them in?
One of my favorite techniques that they use in baseball today is the defensive shift, where you got all these players on one side of the field. I wrote a column yesterday, and the lead of the column was, "It's about time you learned about Wee Willie Keeler." Now, Wee Willie Keeler played right in the 1890s, and he had people would ask him how he played. He said, "You hit them where they ain't."
That's
and
absolutely
if you
right.
hit it where they ain't, you'd have a lot of hits, and he had a lot of hits. But these guys, all of them are swinging for the seats. Everything is launch angle, and this is the game they've given us, and I don't choose to participate. I'm not watching.
Well, you know what, Hal, I'm with you on that, and we've talked many times, but players earlier in baseball and even into the 50s and 60s and 70s. I mean, when I was in high school, college, whatever, you learn to protect the plate. Hey, you get 2 strikes, you shorten up your swing, your stride, whatever, and you try to make contact. It doesn't make any difference to the guys today. They're still swinging away with 2 strikes, and now the strikeouts are just, it's an epidemic of strikeouts. There's more strikeouts than anything.
Exactly.
They're hitting a lot less than they did in 1968, which was the worst year for hitting since the lively ball era started. And another thing, I thought the apocalypse was coming last week because I was listening to the post-game. I was still in the hospital and rehab. I was listening to the Yankee post-game show on radio after Kluber pitched the no-hitter. And at the end, the Sweetie Murdy, who does the post-game shows with the Yankees, said, well, of the 27 outs, 3 had exit velocities that were somewhat high. And I said to myself, my God, and I turned the radio right off.
Yeah, right.
That's hard. That's hard. That's 61 wrong.
I mean, Bowie Kuhn and Seelig and some of the others may have been terrible commissioners, but they never toyed with the fabric the way Manfred is doing now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. He to me is just anti-baseball. Whatever he's trying to do, he's just ruining the game. All these crazy rules and speeding it up and doing all this stuff. Now, like I said before, the rule I think that drives me batty, and I can't understand it, I hate it, is putting that runner on second base. I knew you were going to say that.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm on my soapbox, David. I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
I knew you were going to say it.
We should all be on soapboxes. That's the most ridiculous. It's just so anti-fundamental baseball.
Right.
You earn your way
onto first base.
You played 9 innings to get to that point, and then you're just going to, the game has to be over soon, so we're going to put a guy on second base. Well, wait a minute.
Crazy.
I know.
The other thing that drives me crazy is the 7-inning doubleheader games.
Yeah,
you're right about that.
That's true too.
And they put the
now we're playing softball rules when you have 7-inning games.
That's football. Exactly.
Yep.
And now they're talking about, and they have an experiment in 1 or 2 of the minor leagues. Extra innings, they're going to have like a home run derby to decide it.
Yeah, well, the Pioneer League is doing that.
They're widening the bases. They're widening the bases in the minors, and they were talking about moving the pitcher's mound back a foot.
Yep.
Yes.
And the last time they play around with that was in 1893.
That's a good way to rule baseball pitchers off.
That you could live with, but shortening by widening the bases, you shorten the bases.
No, they're going to make the bases bigger so that there's less distance between the bases.
Exactly. So basically what you're doing is messing with the only consistent rule throughout baseball's history, 90 feet between bases, and it was perfect to mess with that. Really bastardizes the game.
Because they're not, Manfred and those guys, they're not interested in the game. They're interested in the revenue. That's all they're interested in.
Yep. The great Red Smith, who was one of my idols growing up, once wrote that the greatest measurement ever in sports is the 90 feet between bases. It's perfect. Mm-hmm. It's not 91 and it's not 89. It's perfect. 90 feet is the perfect measurement. And now they're messing with it. So, they're messing with everything. It shows
the only thing
in my mind, it shows a disrespect for the game. They don't respect the game. The game was perfect. Leave it alone. Don't reinvent the wheel. Or if you reinvent the wheel, make sure it's round or you'll have a hell of a time driving a truck.
That's it. I'm with you, Hal.
I thought there was an ice cream truck coming by.
We gotta go. The music played. This has been a terrific podcast. I'm so happy to reunite with all 4 of you back together again and do it next month.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you all later.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good to have you back, Alan.
Great.
How about
this was great.
Alan Blumkin, George Case III, and David Hubler. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all. Unanimous vote. Absolutely the weak link. Be well, everybody.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.